Imagine this: nearly 1,000 men, women and children trapped on a remote mountain fortress, surrounded by the might of the Roman Empire. They know defeat is inevitable. So rather than surrender, they make a shocking decision. They choose death. This is the story of the mass suicide at Masada, one of the most dramatic and tragic events in Jewish history. But to understand how it came to this, we need to go back to the beginning, to what life was like for Jews under Roman rule, and the revolts that led to this final desperate act. Today, we are diving into two key aspects of this era: what life was like for Jews under Roman rule, and the dramatic story of the Jewish revolts, culminating in the legendary Battle of Masada. Let's get started. Under Roman rule, Jewish life was a mix of tradition, adaptation, and resistance. The Romans were masters of empire building, and they allowed conquered peoples to maintain their customs as long as they paid taxes and did not cause trouble. For the Jews, this meant they could continue practicing their religion. But there were limits. The Romans respected Judaism as an ancient faith, but they also expected the Jews to acknowledge Roman authority. This created tension, especially when it came to the temple in Jerusalem. The temple wasn't just a religious site, it was the heart of Jewish identity. It was where sacrifices were made, festivals were celebrated, and God's presence was believed to dwell. But the Romans saw it as a potential hotspot for rebellion. They stationed troops nearby and even placed Roman standards, symbols of their gods, in the city, which many Jews saw as sacrilege. One of the most provocative moments came during the reign of Emperor Caligula. In 40 Common Era, Caligula ordered that a statue of himself be placed inside the temple. For Jews, this was unthinkable. Idolatry was strictly forbidden, and the temple was the holiest site in Judaism. The order sparked widespread outrage and nearly led to a revolt. Fortunately, Caligula's assassination in 41 Common Era prevented the statue from being installed, but the incident deepened the mistrust between Jews and Romans. Daily life for Jews under Roman rule varied depending on where they lived. In Jerusalem, the focus was on the temple and religious observance. In the countryside, life revolved around agriculture, with farmers growing olives, grapes, and grains. And in the diaspora, Jewish communities outside Judea, life was about balancing Jewish identity with the culture of the wider Roman world. But despite this relative autonomy, resentment simmered. Heavy taxes, Roman interference in religious matters, and the presence of Roman soldiers made life difficult for many Jews. It was only a matter of time before this tension erupted into open rebellion. In 66 Common Era, the Jewish people had had enough. The first Jewish revolt began as a protest against Roman corruption and escalated into a full-scale war. The rebels scored early victories, even driving the Romans out of Jerusalem for a time. But the Romans, under the command of future Emperor Vespasian and his son Titus, were not to be underestimated. By 70 Common Era, the Romans had retaken Jerusalem. They destroyed the Second Temple, the center of Jewish worship, and massacred thousands of Jews. This was a devastating blow, but the revolt was not over yet. One group of Jewish rebels, known as the Sicarii, fled to the fortress of Masada, a remote mountain stronghold near the Dead Sea. The Sicarii were extremists. They were known for their violent tactics, including assassinating Jewish moderates who favored cooperation with the Romans. While they were fierce fighters, their methods alienated many of their fellow Jews. Masada was built by King Herod the Great as a luxurious palace and fortress, and it was virtually impregnable. The rebels thought they could hold out there indefinitely. But the Romans were determined to crush the rebellion once and for all. They laid siege to Masada, building a massive ramp to breach the fortress walls. For months, the rebels held out, but it was clear the end was near. When the Romans finally broke through in 73 Common Era, they found something shocking: nearly all the rebels were dead. Rather than surrender, the Sicarii had chosen mass suicide. According to the historian Josephus, only 2 women and 5 children survived to tell the tale. The fall of Masada marked the end of the first Jewish revolt, but it was not the end of Jewish resistance. Another major revolt, the Bar Kokhba revolt, erupted in 132 Common Era, but it too was crushed by the Romans. The aftermath of the revolts was brutal. The Romans expelled the Jews from Jerusalem and renamed the city Aelia Capitolina. They also banned Jews from entering the city, except on one day a year, to mourn the destruction of the temple. This marked the beginning of the Jewish diaspora, scattering Jewish communities across the Roman Empire and beyond. The Jewish revolts had profound consequences. The destruction of the temple changed Judaism forever, shifting the focus from temple worship to synagogue-based practices. And the story of Masada became a symbol of Jewish resilience and the fight for freedom. The story of Jewish life under Roman rule and the revolts that followed is one of resilience, faith, and tragedy. It is a reminder of how people can endure even in the face of overwhelming odds. The Battle of Masada, in particular, stands as a testament to the lengths people will go to protect their freedom and dignity. But it is also a story that sparks debate. Some see it as an act of heroic resistance, while others view it as an extreme and tragic choice. What do you think? Was the mass suicide at Masada an act of defiance or extremism? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do not forget to like, subscribe, and share. Let's keep the conversation going. See you next time.